From finally getting behind the wheel of a Formula One car at Silverstone, to potentially replacing Sergio Perez at Red Bull, here's everything we know about Daniel Ricciardo's F1 return. The Honey Badger's stuck in limbo right now because after his horrendous spell at McLaren, where he was comfortably beaten by Lando Norris, he found himself without a seat for the 2023 season. McLaren didn't want Ricciardo and replaced him with Oscar Piastri, but sadly he didn't get offers from any other top team either. So, rather than struggling at the back of the grid in a Haas, Danny Ric chose to be a reserve driver for Red Bull instead. Sure, he wasn't going to be on the grid for 2023, but at least he'd be a part of a championship-winning team. And it looks like that decision's about to pay dividends because Ricciardo's finally getting the chance to drive the RB19. Before you get too excited about it though, he's not driving the car during a race weekend. Instead, he's getting into the cockpit for a Pirelli tire test at Silverstone in July, right after the 2023 British Grand Prix. But while the news may seem like a disappointment for fans of the driver, trust me, this is his best chance to prove his worth. You see, F1 has some very strict regulations when it comes to in-season testing, so Daniel couldn't have driven the RB19 even if Red Bull wanted him to. Sure, there's always the off chance that Max or Sergio gets sick or injured during a race weekend, but even then, it's tricky to put someone like him in the car. After all, he hasn't raced since last season, and his form hasn't been the greatest either. So, this test is what Ricciardo joined Red Bull for, and he's confident he can deliver too. He says that he's been putting in a lot of work in the simulator for this moment, and once he's done at Silverstone, he's gonna get another chance after Monza in September. I don't know about you, but that sounds like plenty of action to me. He's gonna race around in the fastest car on the grid for over 100 laps, and if that's not gonna bring in enough data for other teams to approach him, then I don't know what will. Besides, after a tough few years, Daniel's finally returning to his playful nature too because Red Bull has brought his mojo back. Or at least that's what the team boss Christian Horner thinks anyway. He says that when Ricciardo turned up at Red Bull after the 2022 season, he was almost unrecognizable. Apparently, Daniel was a shadow of the driver who'd left the team all those years ago and wasn't even comfortable in the simulator. Why? Well, Horner thinks it's because he got used to driving a McLaren car that he couldn't push in. He was afraid of attacking apexes and corners like the old Danny Ric. And to be fair, we've seen that in his driving over the past couple of years too. I mean, when was the last time anyone saw him do that signature Ricciardo dive bomb into a corner? But after taking some time off and adjusting to Red Bull's simulator, Christian says that the Australian's getting his mojo back. And he finally looks like the guy who was winning races with them back in the day. Even Ricciardo admits that he's been off the pace for a while now, but he's super confident heading into the test at Silverstone. He says he's excited to finally drive a fast car that's familiar to him. Well, at least in the sim anyway. Because even though Red Bull and F1 cars, in general, have changed a lot since the last time he was with the team, the core philosophy is the same. So, the RB19's still a snappy car with a tendency to oversteer, something both Max and Ricciardo prefer, and now, the Honey Badger's ready to remind everyone what he's made of. The truth is, Daniel deserves a lot more respect than what he gets in the sport. Sure, his spell at McLaren wasn't great, and he could have done better. But people forget just how good he was with Red Bull. In fact, he's the only driver over the past decade who's matched up to Max. So he just wants to remind everyone that he can still turn a fast lap. Also, he says he's spent enough time away from the grid and is finally ready to return to the sport in 2024. For him, while this time off didn't look like it'd bear much fruit initially, it's actually helped him out massively. He's now in a much better space mentally and says that some itches have been scratched during this time too. After all, he felt super burned out after his McLaren spell and needed to recalibrate his mind for the sport again. But he's discovered some new things about himself too, like the fact that he's training better when he's not under constant pressure to perform. Daniel says that being his own boss made him realize that he's not someone who enjoys sitting back on his couch and eating junk food all day. He still cares way too much about the sport, which is why he's automatically drawn toward putting extra work in the gym and coming back in the best shape possible. What's the end goal for Ricciardo, though? Well, he wants to race for Red Bull again, which may seem like an unrealistic goal right now. But hey, a man can dream, right? The Honey Badger says that the fairy tale ending for him would be to finish his career at the team that's given him so much over the years. Though if he actually wants to get there, he's got to get through some hurdles. For starters, he needs to get back on the F1 grid because right now he doesn't even have that. And sure, there are teams like Haas or Williams out there who'd take him, but is that what he wants? Not exactly. Ricciardo says he's not ready to start from scratch and wants to get a competitive seat for 2024. McLaren's obviously off the table, and he's probably not welcome at Alpine either. So that leaves us with what? Aston Martin and Alfa Romeo? Yeah, they've got some long-term plans of their own and wouldn't want Ricciardo. Not only because he's been away from the sport, but also because he's expensive. That said, the Pirelli test at Silverstone's gonna change a lot of things. And in many ways, it's a make-or-break moment for the Australian. After all, if he can't be quick in the fastest car on the grid, then why would any other team bring him on board? Also, since the test takes place after the British Grand Prix, Red Bull's gonna have plenty of data from the race weekend for comparison. So Daniel needs to make sure he's at least as quick, if not faster, than Sergio. And if he somehow matches Max's lap times, then he could get some really good offers for 2024. Sure, it ain't gonna be Ferrari, Mercedes, or Red Bull, but people forget that there are junior teams on the grid too. And that, folks, brings us to Red Bull's sister outfit, AlphaTauri. They've got Yuki Tsunoda and Nick De Vries in the seat right now, both of whom would be looking to get a promotion to that Red Bull seat alongside Max. But the thing is, they haven't exactly been great in 2023. Sure, Yuki's been decent, but people forget just how different the Red Bull car is. I mean, even Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly couldn't handle the pressure, so Yuki's definitely not ready for that seat. Meanwhile, Nick, well, he's probably on his way out if he doesn't start performing soon. And this is the opening that Ricciardo needs right now, because if he could convince Helmut Marko to put him in AlphaTauri for 2024, it opens up a clear route for him to secure a Red Bull seat later down the line. Besides, the energy drinks outfit's in a bit of trouble with its drivers anyway, because Sergio Perez is under a ton of pressure. He's been nowhere near good enough, and has missed 4 Q3 appearances in a row. The last time a Red Bull driver managed this was David Coulthard back in 2008, and he retired the following season. Plus, Christian Horner's also super frustrated because Checo can't put a decent performance together in such a dominant car, so he's racing on borrowed time right now, and no one should be surprised if he gets sacked during the summer break. The obvious replacement would be Yuki right now, cause Daniel still needs to get some miles under his belt. But if Red Bull isn't happy with even Yuki's performance, or if Sergio survives and continues to disappoint till the end of the season, then there's a very high chance that Ricciardo slots right into the seat alongside Max. All he needs is to keep his head down, remain focused, and let his driving do the talking at Silverstone. Because if he does, then there's not much that stands between him and that championship-winning car. So there you have it, from potentially replacing Sergio Perez at Red Bull, to finally getting behind the wheel of a Formula One car at Silverstone. That's everything you needed to know about Daniel Ricciardo's F1 return.